I was steering my truck down Maple Avenue with 24 red roses resting on the passenger seat beside me. The velvet jewelry box sat tucked inside my jacket, pressing against my chest with every breath. 7 years ago today, Diana and I stood at the altar and promised forever to each other. I should have been bursting with joy, counting down the minutes until I could see her face light up when she opened my gift. Instead, a hollow feeling gnawed at my insides. For the past 4 months, something had shifted between us. She laughed at her phone screen late at night, angling it away when I walked past. She worked later and later, coming home smelling like expensive cologne that was not mine. That morning, she kissed my cheek and said she could not take lunch because of meetings. I believed her because I wanted to. I had to. But as I turned onto our street and spotted an unfamiliar gray BMW sedan parked in our driveway, every alarm in my body started screaming. Before I share what I discovered when I walked through that door, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt that sinking sensation in your gut when you know the truth, but your heart refuses to accept it? Leave a comment below and tell me where you are watching this from. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel, because the story I'm about to tell you will show you exactly what happens when trust gets shattered into 1,000 pieces. Diana walked into my life 9 years ago on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was grabbing coffee at this little shop near the construction site where I worked as a civil engineer. She breezed through the door in a navy dress, raindrops still clinging to her dark hair, carrying a leather laptop case that looked far too heavy for her slim frame. We struck up a conversation while waiting for our orders. She worked in digital marketing for a software startup downtown. Smart, driven with this infectious laugh that made everyone around her smile. We exchanged numbers, went on our first date that Friday, and within 6 months I knew she was the one. We got married 2 years later in a small ceremony at her parents' house. It was not fancy, but it was perfect. We pooled our savings and bought a little 2-bedroom house in the suburbs, the kind with a white picket fence and an old apple tree in the backyard that dropped fruit every September. Sunday mornings became sacred. I would wake up early to make blueberry pancakes from scratch while she brewed French press coffee that filled the whole kitchen with its rich aroma. She would sneak up behind me, wrap her arms around my waist, and rest her chin on my shoulder while I flipped the pancakes. We talked about everything. Our dreams of traveling to Ireland, the nursery we would build in the spare bedroom when we were ready for kids, the vegetable garden we planned to plant next spring. Life felt complete. I put in long hours managing construction projects across the city, but I always made time for us. Date nights every Friday, morning jogs together on Saturdays, evening walks around the neighborhood where we would hold hands and talk about our days. I loved coming home to her. I loved the way she hummed while doing dishes. I loved finding little notes she left in my lunch bag that said things like, "Kick butt today, babe," or "Cannot wait to see you tonight." For 7 years, I thought we had built something unbreakable. Then, about 4 months before our anniversary, the foundation started cracking. Diana came home one evening and announced she had been assigned to a major campaign for a new client. The team was small, just her and 3 others led by a recently hired senior manager named Brad. She seemed excited about the challenge, so I encouraged her to dive in. That first week, she stayed late twice. No big deal. The second week, it became 4 nights. By the third week, she was rarely home before 9:30 or 10 at night. When I asked how the project was going, she gave vague answers. "Busy," she would say. "Brad is really pushing us to exceed expectations." I noticed other changes too. She started dressing differently for work, trading her usual slacks and blouses for fitted dresses and higher heels. She bought new perfume, something floral and expensive that she sprayed on her wrists every morning. Her phone became an extension of her hand. She would be sitting next to me on the couch and it would buzz with a message. She would glance at the screen, smile, this private little smile, and start typing rapidly. When I leaned over to see what was so funny, she would tilt the phone away or say it was just a work meme. One night, I reached for her phone to check the time because mine was charging upstairs. She practically lunged across the coffee table to grab it first. "I will get it for you," she said quickly. That was when I noticed she had added a 6-digit passcode. In 7 years of marriage, her phone had never been locked. I tried talking to her about it. One Saturday morning, I made her favorite breakfast and asked if everything was okay between us. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "I am just stressed with this project, Harold. Once it wraps up next month, things will go back to normal." I wanted to believe her. I told myself I was being paranoid, that work stress was a real thing, that I should be more supportive instead of suspicious. But at night, lying next to her in bed, I felt the distance growing. She stopped curling into me the way she used to. She stopped initiating any physical closeness. When I tried to kiss her, she would turn her head so my lips landed on her cheek instead. "I am exhausted," she would mumble. "Can we just sleep?" Our anniversary fell on a Thursday. I woke up that morning at 6 before the alarm and slipped out of bed quietly so I would not wake her. I wanted to make the day special despite everything. I cooked eggs Benedict with homemade hollandaise sauce, squeezed fresh orange juice, and arranged everything on a tray with a single red rose in a vase. I also placed a handwritten card next to her plate. Inside, I had written, "7 years ago, I married my best friend. Thank you for every laugh, every adventure, every ordinary moment that became extraordinary because you were in it. I love you more than words can say. Happy anniversary." When I brought the tray upstairs, Diana was just waking up. She blinked at me in surprise, then sat up and read the card. "This is sweet, Harold," she said softly. But her smile seemed forced, and she barely touched the food. She checked her phone twice while I sat on the edge of the bed trying to make conversation. Finally, she said, "I have an early meeting this morning. I really need to get ready." I suggested we grab lunch together to celebrate. She shook her head. "I have back-to-back calls today. How about dinner? I will try to leave the office by 6:30, so we can make our 7 o'clock reservation." I had booked a table at Trattoria Bella, the Italian place where I proposed to her 5 years ago. She loved their handmade ravioli and tiramisu. "That sounds perfect," I said, kissing her forehead. She smiled again, but something in her eyes looked guilty. I ignored it. I had to. After she left for work, I spent the morning finishing up emails and project reports so I could take the afternoon off. Around noon, I drove to the florist and picked up 24 long-stem red roses. The woman at the counter tied them with a white satin ribbon and tucked a small card into the bouquet that read, "To my beautiful wife." Next, I stopped by the jewelry store. For 3 months, I had been setting aside money from every paycheck to buy Diana something truly special. The necklace I chose was sterling silver with a heart-shaped pendant. Inside the heart, the jeweler had engraved both our names with the date of our wedding beneath them. It cost $800 more than I had ever spent on a single gift, but she was worth every penny. By the time I finished my errands, it was almost 5 in the afternoon. I drove home with the roses on the seat beside me and the jewelry box safely zipped into my jacket pocket. My plan was simple. I would set up candles around the living room, put on some soft jazz music, and chill a bottle of her favorite white wine. Then I would surprise her when she got home, and we would head to dinner together. I pictured her reaction when she opened the velvet box and saw the necklace. I imagined her throwing her arms around me, telling me I was too much laughing the way she used to laugh before everything got complicated. But when I turned onto our quiet suburban street, my fantasy shattered. There, parked directly in front of our house, was a sleek gray BMW with tinted windows. I did not recognize it. None of our neighbors drove a car like that. My pulse quickened. I pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine, staring at the unfamiliar vehicle. Diana said she would be at the office until at least 6:30. So whose car was this? And why was it here? I sat in my truck for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel, trying to come up with a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was a delivery person. Maybe it was someone visiting the neighbors and they parked in front of the wrong house. Maybe Diana had come home early to surprise me, and this was a coworker who gave her a ride. That last thought made no sense, though. Her car was in the garage. I could see it through the window. My hands were shaking as I grabbed the roses and stepped out of the truck. The front door was unlocked. I pushed it open slowly and stepped inside. The living room was dim. Afternoon sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the furniture. Diana's black leather purse sat on the arm of the sofa. Her high heels, the expensive ones she only wore for important meetings, lay kicked off near the bottom of the stairs. I heard a sound from upstairs. Laughter. A woman's voice, light and musical. Diana's voice. And then a deeper voice, male, saying something I could not quite make out. My chest tightened. I set the roses down on the kitchen counter, the thorns catching on my sleeve. Every instinct told me to turn around and leave. To walk back out that door, get in my truck, and drive somewhere far away where I did not have to know the truth. But my feet carried me forward. I climbed the stairs one slow step at a time, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might crack a rib. The bedroom door at the end of the hall was halfway open. Light spilled out into the hallway. I could hear them more clearly now. Diana was laughing again, that carefree laugh I had not heard in months. The man said something low and she giggled. There was the clink of glass against glass. I reached the door and pushed it open. The scene in front of me felt like a punch to the stomach. Diana was sitting on our bed, wearing a silk blouse and skirt. Next to her sat a man I had never seen before. He was tall, probably in his mid-30s, with perfectly styled dark hair and a tailored charcoal suit. His jacket was draped over the chair in the corner. On the nightstand between them sat an open bottle of red wine and 2 glasses half empty. They were close his arm, resting casually along the headboard behind her, her hand on his knee. When the door swung open, they both froze. Diana's face went pale. Her eyes widened, and she jerked away from the man, pulling her hand back like she had touched a hot stove. "Harold," she gasped. "What are you doing home?" The man stood up quickly, fumbling to button his shirt cuff. He looked at me, then at Diana, clearly trying to assess the situation. I stood there, frozen, unable to form words. This was my bedroom. The walls we had painted soft gray together. The bed frame we had assembled on a Sunday afternoon, laughing when we put the headboard on backwards the first time. Our wedding photo hung on the wall above the dresser. Diana in her white dress, me in my navy suit, both of us grinning like we had won the lottery. And now this stranger was here in the middle of it all. "What the hell is this?" I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Diana scrambled off the bed, tugging her skirt down even though it had not ridden up. "Harold, I can explain." The man cleared his throat. "Look, man, I did not know you would be home so early. Diana said you worked late on Thursdays." "Get out," I said louder this time. "Get out of my house." He did not need to be told twice. He grabbed his jacket from the chair and hurried past me, not making eye contact. I heard his footsteps pounding down the stairs, the front door opening and slamming shut, and then the sound of his car engine starting outside. The BMW pulled away from the curb and disappeared down the street. I turned back to Diana. She was standing by the bed, her arms wrapped around herself, tears streaming down her face. "I am so sorry," she sobbed. "Harold, I am so sorry. This was not supposed to happen." "How long?" I asked. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smudging her mascara. "What? How long have you been seeing him?" She looked down at the floor. 3 months. 3 months? 12 weeks? 90 days. While I was working overtime to save money for her anniversary gift, she was sneaking around with this Brad person. While I was lying awake at night, worrying that I was not doing enough to make her happy, she was texting him, planning secret meetings, lying to my face. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "Why?" I asked, my voice cracked. "Why today?" "On our anniversary," Diana sobbed harder. "It was not supposed to be today. Brad suggested we celebrate finishing the project. We went to lunch and he said his apartment was too far to drive back to the office, so I said we could come here for a little while. I thought you would not be home until after 7. I thought I had time. Time. She thought she had time. Time to betray me in our own home and clean up the evidence before I found out." I felt sick. I looked around the room and noticed details I had missed before. The wine bottle was expensive, something we would never buy for ourselves. There were 2 glasses, not 1. Diana's blouse was slightly wrinkled, like it had been hastily buttoned. The comforter on the bed was rumpled. I pulled out my phone. "What are you doing?" Diana asked, panic rising in her voice. I did not answer. I started taking pictures. The unmade bed, the wine bottle, the 2 glasses. Diana tried to step in front of me, reaching for my phone, but I moved around her. I walked over to the dresser and opened my laptop, logging into the home security system I had installed a year ago. We lived in a safe neighborhood, but I wanted peace of mind. The cameras covered the front door, the driveway, and the backyard. I pulled up the footage from earlier that afternoon. There it was, time-stamped at 2:14 p.m. Brad's BMW pulling into our driveway. Diana getting out of the passenger seat laughing at something he said. The 2 of them walking up to the front door together, Diana unlocking it with her key. I downloaded the video file to my phone. Then I turned to Diana's phone, which was sitting on the nightstand. She had been too shocked to grab it. I picked it up. It was unlocked. I opened her messages. The first conversation at the top was with someone saved as B. I clicked on it. Hundreds of messages, thousands maybe. Sweet words, inside jokes, messages from just this morning. "Cannot wait to see you today," Brad had written at 11 a.m. "Same," Diana had replied. 2 o'clock, he asked. "Perfect," she answered, followed by a heart emoji. I scrolled further back. Messages from weeks ago. "I wish I could wake up next to you every morning. You make me feel alive again. I think I am falling for you." I took screenshots of everything, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Diana was sitting on the edge of the bed now, her face buried in her hands, shoulders shaking with sobs. "Harold, please," she choked out. "I will end it. I will never see Brad again. I will do whatever you want. Please do not leave me." I looked at her, this woman I had loved for 9 years, this person I thought I knew better than anyone in the world, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a vast, empty numbness. "I need space," I said quietly. "I need time to think." I walked to the closet and pulled out the duffel bag I used for weekend trips. I threw in a few changes of clothes, my toiletries, my laptop, and the folder with our important documents. Diana followed me around the room, begging, pleading. "Where are you going, Harold? Please, we can talk about this. We can fix this. Do not do this on our anniversary." Our anniversary. The words felt like a cruel joke. I zipped up the bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked past her without looking back. I went downstairs, grabbed my keys from the hook by the door, and left. I did not look at the roses I had left on the counter. I did not think about the necklace still in my jacket pocket. I just got in my truck and drove. I ended up at a budget motel 3 miles from our house. The room smelled like stale cigarettes and industrial cleaner, but I did not care. I sat on the edge of the scratchy comforter and stared at the wall. My phone buzzed constantly. Texts from Diana. Please come home. I made a horrible mistake. I love you. I turned the phone face down and did not respond. I did not sleep that night. I just sat there watching the red numbers on the digital clock tick forward, replaying every moment of the past 4 months. Every lie, every excuse, every time I ignored my gut because I wanted to trust her. At 8:30 the next morning, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Diana's father, George. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Harold. George said, his voice clipped and formal. Diana told Patricia and me what happened. We need to sit down and talk. Can you come by the house this afternoon? I agreed, mostly because I did not have the energy to argue. Diana's parents lived in a large colonial-style home about 20 minutes away. I had always gotten along well with George and Patricia. They had welcomed me into the family, helped us move into our first apartment, babysat our dog when we went on vacation. I thought they liked me. I arrived at their house just after 2 in the afternoon. Patricia answered the door and led me into the living room without a word. Diana was already there, sitting on the sofa between her mother and her younger sister, Stephanie. Diana looked awful. Her hair was tangled, her eyes puffy and red. She had clearly been crying all night. George sat in his leather recliner arms, cross-looking at me like I was a suspect in an interrogation room. The tension in the room was suffocating. Patricia spoke first. Harold, please sit down. I remained standing. We have always thought of you as part of this family, she continued. Diana made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but marriage is not easy. It takes work. It takes forgiveness. I stared at her. Forgiveness? Yes, Patricia said firmly. We raised Diana to be honest and kind. She would not have done this if something was not wrong in the marriage. You have to take some responsibility here. My jaw dropped. Responsibility for what? George leaned forward. Diana told us you have been distant, working all the time, not making her feel appreciated. A woman does not stray unless she is unhappy at home, Harold. I could not believe what I was hearing. I worked hard to provide for us. I took on extra projects so we could save money. I planned an entire anniversary surprise while she was in our bedroom with another man. Stephanie spoke up, her voice sharp. Maybe if you had been paying attention to her emotional needs, she would not have looked elsewhere. My sister deserves better than someone who treats her like a roommate. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos. I showed them the pictures of the bedroom, the wine, the rumpled sheets. Then I showed them the security footage. Brad's car arriving at 2:14 p.m. Diana and him walking into the house together. The timestamp clearly visible. This is what happened, I said, my voice rising. She brought him into our home on our anniversary. They were alone for over 3 hours. Patricia barely glanced at the screen. Those pictures do not prove anything happened. Maybe they were working on the project and decided to relax with some wine. You are jumping to conclusions. In our bedroom, I shot back. With the door closed. George stood up, his face reddening. Do not raise your voice in my house, young man. Diana admitted she got emotionally close to this Brad fellow, but she swears nothing physical happened. You are overreacting. Diana nodded quickly. We were just talking, Harold, that is all. You are making this into something it is not. I showed them the text messages, the flirting, the heart emojis, the messages about falling in love. Patricia shook her head. Words on a screen do not mean anything. People say things they do not mean all the time. Stephanie crossed her arms. Also, you had cameras installed. You were spying on your own wife. That is controlling and honestly kind of creepy. I looked around the room. 4 faces staring back at me, and not one of them seemed to care that I was the one who had been betrayed. Not one of them asked how I was feeling. All I heard was how Diana needed support, how I needed to forgive, how this was somehow my fault for not being attentive enough. I came here thinking you might understand, I said slowly. I thought maybe you would see how much this hurt me, but I see now that I was wrong. Patricia's expression softened, but her voice stayed firm. Harold, be reasonable. Diana is our daughter. She made a mistake, but everyone deserves a second chance. Do not throw away 7 years over one bad decision. One bad decision, I repeated. She has been lying to me for 3 months. She brought another man into our home on our anniversary. George waved his hand dismissively. You are being dramatic. Marriages go through rough patches. You work through them. You do not run away at the first sign of trouble. I felt something inside me snap. I straightened my shoulders and looked George directly in the eye. I am not running away. I am choosing not to stay with someone who does not respect me. There is a difference. Diana stood up, tears streaming down her face. Harold, please. I will change. I will quit my job tomorrow. I will never speak to Brad again. I will do anything you ask. Just please, do not give up on us. I looked at her for a long moment. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to rewind time. Go back to when we were happy, pretend none of this ever happened. But I could not unsee what I saw. I could not unknow what I knew. And I could not stay with someone whose family would defend her no matter what she did. I am filing for divorce, I said quietly. My lawyer will be in touch next week. The room exploded. Patricia gasped. Stephanie started shouting. George jumped to his feet. You are making the biggest mistake of your life, son. Diana is a good woman. You will never find anyone better. I almost laughed. A good woman. She cheated on me. And you are all sitting here defending her, blaming me, telling me I need to forgive and forget. Well, I am done. Stephanie pointed her finger at me. You are going to regret this when you are alone and miserable. Maybe, I said, but at least I will have my self-respect. I turned toward the door. Diana chased after me, grabbing my arm. Harold, please, I am begging you. I love you. I made a mistake, but I love you. I gently pulled my arm free. If you loved me, you would not have done this. I walked out of that house, got into my truck, and drove away. Diana stood in the driveway sobbing, but I did not look back. For the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The decision hurt, but it was right. The next morning, I met with Angela Martinez, a divorce attorney who came highly recommended by a colleague. Her office was downtown on the 15th floor of a glass tower. She was in her late 40s, sharp-eyed with short gray hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. I laid out everything. The timeline, the evidence, the text messages, the security footage. She reviewed it all methodically, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. You have an airtight case, she said finally. Clear evidence of infidelity, documentation, witnesses. The house is in your name, correct? Yes, I said. I bought it 2 years before we got married. Good. That simplifies things. Now, what are you hoping to get out of this divorce? I shrugged. I just want out. I do not care about punishing her. I just want to move on." Angela set down her pen and looked at me seriously. "Harold, I understand you are hurt, but you need to think practically. She betrayed you. Do not let your emotions make you a doormat in the settlement. You deserve to protect yourself financially." I thought about it. She was right. I nodded. "Okay, what do you suggest?" "We file immediately. We request that Diana vacate the house since it is your sole property. We push for you to retain the majority of the joint savings given the circumstances, and we send copies of the evidence to her employer." I hesitated at that last part. Why her employer? Because based on what you have told me, Brad is her direct supervisor. Most companies have policies against romantic relationships between managers and subordinates. If we can prove they violated company policy, it strengthens your position and also creates consequences for her actions. It felt harsh. But then I remembered Diana sitting on our bed, with Brad laughing drinking wine while I was out buying her anniversary roses. I remembered her family defending her, blaming me. "Do it," I said. Angela drafted the divorce petition and filed it that afternoon. She also sent a formal letter to Diana's company attaching copies of the text messages and timestamps showing that Diana and Brad had engaged in a romantic relationship during work hours, violating the company's code of conduct. Then we waited. The response came faster than I expected. 6 days later, Diana called me hysterical. I almost did not answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "What did you do?" she screamed through sobs. "Harold, what did you do?" "What are you talking about?" I asked calmly. "They fired me. The company fired me and Brad both. Human Resources called us into a meeting this morning and terminated us for ethics violations. I do not have a job anymore. Harold, how am I supposed to pay my bills? How am I supposed to live?" I felt a pang of guilt, but it was fleeting. "You made choices, Diana. Now you are living with the consequences." "You are ruining my life," she yelled. "Brad's wife is divorcing him. She is threatening to sue me. His kids will not even talk to him. You destroyed everything." "I did not destroy anything," I said quietly. "You did that all by yourself." She sobbed harder. "Please, Harold, please help me. Talk to the company. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I will do anything." "I cannot help you," I said. "Goodbye, Diana." I hung up. 20 minutes later, Patricia called. "Are you satisfied now?" she hissed. "You cost our daughter her job, her career, her reputation, all because you could not forgive one mistake." "One mistake that lasted 3 months," I said. "One mistake she made in our home on our anniversary. I did not cost her anything. She made her own choices. You are vindictive," Patricia spat. "Cruel and vindictive. We should have never welcomed you into this family." "Well, you do not have to worry about that anymore," I said. "The divorce will be finalized soon." I hung up on her too and blocked both her number and Diana's. Over the next 2 months, the divorce proceedings moved forward. Because I had overwhelming evidence of infidelity, and because Diana had no legal claim to the house, the settlement was straightforward. The judge ruled in my favor on almost every point. I kept the house. I kept 70% of our joint savings. Diana was required to remove all her belongings within 30 days. She tried to contest it, but her lawyer advised her she had no grounds. On the day of the final hearing, I sat across the courtroom from her. She looked thin, worn down, defeated. Part of me felt sorry for her. But mostly, I just felt relieved. When the judge signed the final decree, it was over. 7 years of marriage dissolved in a matter of minutes. I walked out of the courthouse into bright afternoon sunlight. Diana caught up with me on the steps. "I hope you are happy," she said bitterly. I looked at her. I am not happy, Diana, but I am free, and that is enough. She turned and walked away, and I never saw her again. The first 3 months after the divorce were the hardest. The house felt too big, too quiet. Every corner held a memory. I could not walk past the apple tree in the backyard without remembering the time we carved our initials into the trunk. I could not cook breakfast without thinking of those Sunday mornings. So I made changes. I sold the bed we had shared and bought a new one. I repainted the bedroom a completely different color, a deep blue instead of gray. I rearranged the furniture. I replaced the curtains. I turned the space into something that belonged only to me. My best friend Marcus became my lifeline. He showed up unannounced with pizza and beer, forced me to go to the gym with him, dragged me to baseball games and concerts. "You cannot sit in this house forever, man," he said one Saturday afternoon. "You need to get out and live." I resisted at first. It felt easier to stay home to avoid people, to not have to explain what happened. But eventually I gave in. I joined a gym and started lifting weights every morning before work. I took up running and signed up for a local 5K race. I threw myself into my job volunteering for complex projects that required my full attention. My boss noticed. 6 months after the divorce, I was promoted to senior project manager with a significant raise. I also joined a hiking group that met every Saturday. We would drive out to state parks and spend the day on the trails. The people in the group were kind, easygoing, and nobody pried into my personal life. They just knew me as Harold, the guy who always brought extra granola bars and could identify every bird we saw. Slowly, I started to feel like myself again. Not the person I was before Diana, but someone new. Someone stronger. A year after the divorce, I was sitting on my back porch one Sunday morning drinking coffee and watching the sun rise over the neighbors' rooftops. The air was cool, the sky streaked with pink and orange. I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the pain, the anger, and I realized something important. I did not regret my decision. Yes, it had been agonizing. Yes, I had spent countless nights wondering if I should have tried harder, forgiven her, given her another chance. But deep down, I knew the truth. Staying with Diana would have meant accepting disrespect. It would have meant living with the constant fear that she might do it again. It would have meant losing myself. I learned that walking away is not weakness, it is strength. I learned that self-respect is not negotiable. I learned that family does not always mean support, and that sometimes the people who should have your back will let you down. But you can still stand up for yourself. You can still choose dignity over comfort. I also learned that healing does not happen overnight. It is slow, painful, and messy. But it is possible. That evening, Marcus invited me to a birthday party for one of his coworkers. I almost said no. Social gatherings still made me nervous. But something told me to go. The party was at a rooftop bar downtown, crowded and loud. Marcus introduced me to a dozen people whose names I immediately forgot. And then I met Emma. She was an architect, tall, with curly auburn hair and a quick smile. We ended up talking for over an hour about building design, our favorite cities, and the best hiking trails in the state. There were no expectations, no pressure. Just an easy conversation that made me laugh for the first time in weeks. When the party ended, Emma handed me her business card. "If you ever want to grab coffee and talk more about sustainable architecture, let me know," she said. I nodded, tucked the card into my wallet, and went home. I did not know if I would call her. I was not sure I was ready to trust someone new, but for the first time in a year I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe someday. Looking back now, I understand that the end of my marriage was not the end of my life. It was a painful, necessary turning point. I learned that self-respect matters more than holding on to something broken. I learned that forgiving someone does not mean staying with them. I learned that sometimes the hardest choice is the only right choice. I am not bitter. I am not angry. I am free. And freedom, I have discovered, is worth more than 7 years of comfortable lies. I made the choice to walk away, and I have never regretted it. If you have ever been in a situation where you had to choose between your self-respect and holding on to something familiar, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share your story. How did you find the strength to move forward? If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It really helps others find this content. Make sure you subscribe to this channel so you do not miss future stories about real-life struggles and the courage it takes to overcome them. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, choosing yourself is never the wrong decision. Stay strong and take care of yourselves out there.